Hello, I'm Hope Logan. I am an actor on Bold and the Beautiful, and many people really love both me and our Bold and the Beautiful drama. So I've come here to share updates about my beloved Bold and the Beautiful. Everyone, please subscribe and support me. If you do, I will keep coming every day with new updates for you. The tension that had been simmering beneath the surface at Forrester Creations was about to erupt in a way no one could ignore. In the aftermath of Will Spencer's shocking firing, emotions were running high, loyalties were being questioned, and old family wounds were beginning to reopen. As whispers spread through the halls of the fashion empire, Katie Logan Spencer found herself unable to stay silent. Driven by a mixture of frustration, disappointment, and fierce maternal instinct, she made her way to Forrester Creations with a clear purpose in mind. The sting of what had happened to Will still lingered heavily in her heart, and the more she thought about it, the more she felt that certain people should have done more to protect him. At the center of those feelings stood Brooke Logan, and Katie was prepared to confront her sister face to face. When Katie finally arrived, the atmosphere inside the executive offices felt tense, even before a single word was spoken. The elegant surroundings of Forrester Creations suddenly seemed cold and unwelcoming as Katie carried the weight of her frustrations into Brooke's orbit. It didn't take long for the conversation to turn toward Will and the events that had led to his dismissal. Katie may openly admit that one thing continued to bother her more than anything else: Brooke's apparent unwillingness to stand up for her own nephew. To Katie, that silence spoke volumes. Will wasn't just another employee who had made a mistake. He was family. He carried both the Logan and Spencer names, yet from Katie's perspective, it seemed as though those connections meant very little within the powerful Forrester dynasty that Brooke had become so fiercely loyal to. As emotions rose, Katie's disappointment could begin transforming into something sharper. She might suggest that despite all the years the Logans had invested in their relationships with the Forresters, the truth was becoming painfully clear. In Katie's eyes, when push came to shove, Will was ultimately viewed as an outsider. No matter how much history existed between the families, no matter how many personal bonds had been formed, the Forrester family always seemed to protect their own first. The realization would leave a bitter taste behind, and Katie would not hesitate to make that point crystal clear. Her words could carry the frustration of a mother who felt her son had been cast aside, while others closed ranks around one of their own. Naturally, Brooke would not allow those accusations to go unanswered. She would quickly rise to Ridge Forrester's defense, determined to explain why things unfolded the way they did. From Brooke's perspective, Ridge's loyalty to R.J. Forrester was entirely understandable, especially after Will's impulsive and damaging sucker punch. Brooke could argue that Ridge had every reason to support his son under those circumstances. In fact, she might even turn the criticism back toward Katie, suggesting that the real issue was Will's behavior. The implication would be difficult to miss. Brooke could hint that perhaps Will should have been taught better judgment and stronger self-control rather than resorting to such a reckless and disrespectful act. What began as a disagreement would quickly evolve into a deeply personal clash, with neither woman willing to back down. Yet despite her anger, Katie would likely insist that everything had ultimately worked out for the best. Beneath the disappointment surrounding Will's firing, there was also a new opportunity beginning to take shape. Bill Spencer was more than ready to welcome his son into the family business, and that reality offered Katie a measure of comfort. The idea of Will stepping into a role alongside his father brought a sense of renewed purpose and possibility. Instead of dwelling on rejection, Katie could focus on a future where Will's talents were valued and his family stood firmly behind him. In her mind, perhaps Forrester Creations had done Will a favor without even realizing it. His next chapter was already waiting, and it promised to be one that carried the strength and legacy of the Spencer name. As the conversation continued, Brooke would shift her attention toward another subject entirely. With Eric Forrester's celebrated collection no longer dominating headlines, she might begin questioning what came next for Katie's fashion house. On the surface, Brooke could frame her questions as genuine concern. She might wonder whether Katie was worried about maintaining momentum after experiencing such tremendous success. Perhaps Brooke would suggest that matching the excitement and attention generated by Eric's collection would be an incredibly difficult challenge. Her words could sound supportive, but underneath them might linger an unmistakable edge, one that Katie would immediately recognize. The conversation would begin drifting into dangerous territory, touching on ambitions, achievements, and rivalries that neither sister could fully ignore. For a brief moment, Katie might find herself tempted to reveal a game-changing secret. The knowledge would sit just beneath the surface, practically demanding to be spoken aloud. Hope Logan Spencer had already joined Logan for a brand new fashion line, a development capable of reshaping the future of the company and sending shockwaves throughout the industry. The temptation to watch Brooke's expression change in real time could be almost irresistible, yet Katie would likely stop herself before saying too much. She would understand the power of that information and recognize that some surprises were worth protecting. Even so, keeping such a massive secret hidden while standing across from Brooke would prove increasingly difficult. The tension would continue building until the atmosphere inside the CEO office became almost unbearable. What started as a disagreement would transform into a full-blown confrontation, with years of complicated family dynamics fueling every exchange. According to spoilers, Katie and Brooke's conflict would explode right there inside the executive suite, turning the office into a battleground of emotions. Voices could rise, accusations might fly, old resentments could resurface with startling intensity. The bond between sisters would suddenly feel strained beneath the pressure of competing loyalties and deeply personal grievances. As the confrontation reached its boiling point, Katie would reportedly wag her finger at Brooke and deliver a powerful warning. There would be a sense that Katie knew something Brooke did not, and she would not hesitate to let that fact hang in the air between them. Her words might carry a quiet confidence, the confidence of someone aware that the future was about to shift in unexpected ways. Katie could hint that major developments were already in motion behind the scenes. Whatever was coming, she would strongly suggest that it would leave Brooke, and plenty of others, completely stunned. The mystery surrounding her warning would only deepen the tension, creating an unsettling feeling that something much bigger was unfolding beneath the surface. Katie may then take things even further by hinting that Logan was preparing to become a legitimate threat to Forrester Creations. The very suggestion would be enough to send a jolt through the conversation. For years, Forrester had stood as a dominant force in the fashion world, seemingly untouchable and unmatched. But Katie's confidence could imply that the balance of power was beginning to change. Her words would suggest that Logan was no longer content to exist in the shadows. Instead, it was preparing to step forward, challenge the established order, and prove that it deserved a place among the industry's elite. Whether Brooke believed her or not, the warning would linger long after the conversation ended. At some point, the argument might circle back toward Hope and her decision to take a break from the toxic environment she had experienced at Forrester Creations. Katie could passionately defend her daughter's choice, arguing that it was hardly surprising given everything that had happened. The emotional toll of working within such a charged atmosphere had become impossible to ignore. To Katie, Hope's decision represented self-preservation rather than surrender. It was a chance to step away from negativity and reclaim her sense of purpose somewhere healthier and more supportive. The topic would only add another layer of emotion to an already explosive confrontation. From there, the discussion could once again return to Will, creating a painful connection between Brooke's failure to defend him and what Katie might view as her failure to truly stand up for Hope. Katie could argue that a troubling pattern had emerged. In her eyes, Brooke consistently chose loyalty to the Forresters over loyalty to her own family. Whether discussing Will's firing or Hope's struggles, Katie might insist that Brooke repeatedly failed to fight for the people who needed her most. Those accusations would strike at the heart of Brooke's identity, making them especially difficult to dismiss. The emotional stakes would rise even higher as both women confronted uncomfortable truths about family, loyalty, and the choices they had made. By the time the showdown finally began winding down, Katie would almost certainly have dropped enough clues to spark curiosity and suspicion. Brooke might not immediately understand what her sister had been hinting at throughout the confrontation. The significance of Katie's warnings could remain frustratingly out of reach in the moment. However, as time passes and the pieces slowly begin falling into place, Brooke may eventually connect those clues to Hope's leave of absence and the secret plans unfolding behind the scenes. When that realization finally arrives, it could change everything. One thing is certain, this clash between Brooke and Katie promises to deliver all the drama, emotion, and family conflict that fans have come to expect. Beneath the polished glamour of the fashion world, old loyalties are being tested, new alliances are forming, and long-buried frustrations are finally coming to the surface. As the future of Logan and Forrester hangs in the balance, the rivalry between these two sisters threatens to ignite consequences that could ripple far beyond a single argument. And as secrets inch closer to being revealed, viewers can expect the storm that began in that CEO office to grow even larger in the days ahead. The echoes of Katie and Brooke's confrontation would continue to linger long after the office doors closed behind them. The heated exchange might be over for the moment, but the emotions unleashed during that showdown would refuse to settle. Brooke would remain standing in the CEO office, replaying every word her sister had thrown at her. Katie's accusations about loyalty, family, and favoritism would cut deeper than Brooke wanted to admit. While Brooke would outwardly dismiss many of the claims, a small part of her might begin wondering whether Katie's anger stemmed from more than just Will's firing. There was something hidden beneath Katie's words, something she had carefully danced around without fully revealing, and that mystery would continue to gnaw at Brooke's thoughts. As the day moved forward, Brooke might find herself reflecting on Will Spencer's situation from a different perspective. Although she firmly believed that Ridge had every right to stand behind RJ after the altercation, Katie's disappointment would be difficult to ignore. Brooke knew how fiercely protective Katie was of her children. Any mother would struggle to watch her son lose his position and face public embarrassment, regardless of the circumstances that led to it. Even if Brooke felt Will's actions were wrong, she could begin recognizing that Katie's pain was rooted in a place of love rather than simple anger. Yet every time Brooke tried to soften her view, she would inevitably return to the same conclusion. Actions have consequences, and Will's choices had placed everyone in an impossible position. Meanwhile, Katie would leave Forrester Creations carrying a very different sense of satisfaction. The confrontation may not have changed Brooke's mind, but Katie would feel relieved to finally say what had been weighing on her heart. For too long, she had watched the Forrester family dictate the narrative while others were expected to quietly accept the outcome. This time, she refused to remain silent. More importantly, Katie would be energized by the future that was beginning to take shape. The opportunities opening up for Will and the secret developments happening at Logan would give her renewed confidence. Instead of dwelling on losses, she would focus on the possibilities waiting just ahead, and that confidence would make her warning to Brooke feel even more significant. Behind the scenes, the biggest secret of all would remain carefully protected. Hope Logan Spencer's involvement with Logan represented far more than a simple business move. It had the potential to reshape relationships, create unexpected alliances, and challenge long-established power structures within the fashion industry. Katie understood exactly how explosive that information could be if revealed too soon. Every conversation, every meeting, and every strategic decision now carried greater importance. The anticipation surrounding the project would continue building quietly, hidden from public view, but steadily gaining momentum. Like a storm gathering strength beyond the horizon, its arrival felt increasingly inevitable. Back at Forrester Creations, Brooke's thoughts would inevitably drift toward Hope. Katie's comments about toxic energy and Hope's leave of absence would refuse to leave her mind. At first, Brooke might dismiss those remarks as emotional exaggerations born from frustration. Yet the more she thought about them, the harder they would become to ignore. Hope's recent decisions, her distance from the company, and the growing uncertainty surrounding her future would suddenly seem connected in ways Brooke had not fully considered before. Tiny details that once appeared insignificant could begin fitting together into a larger and far more troubling picture. The possibility that Hope was planning something major would slowly begin taking root in Brooke's mind. She might recall Katie's confidence during their argument, the way she seemed almost eager to hint at a coming surprise. It was not the confidence of someone bluffing or making empty threats. Instead, it felt like the certainty of someone who already knew the outcome. That realization could leave Brooke increasingly uneasy. The thought that important decisions were being made without her knowledge would be difficult to accept, especially when those decisions involved her own daughter. Questions would start multiplying faster than answers could arrive. At the same time, Katie's prediction about Logan becoming real competition for Forrester Creations would continue hanging over everything like a challenge waiting to be answered. For years, Forrester had enjoyed a position of dominance built upon reputation, talent, and legacy. The company's name carried enormous influence throughout the fashion world. Yet industries have a way of changing when new ambition enters the equation. Fresh ideas, unexpected partnerships, and determined leadership can transform underdogs into serious contenders. If Katie's confidence was justified, then Forrester may soon discover that its greatest threat was not coming from a distant rival, but from people it once underestimated. For Brooke, the uncertainty would become increasingly frustrating. She would begin searching for clarity, examining conversations and recent events for clues she may have missed. The memory of Katie's warning would replay repeatedly in her mind. Every subtle remark, every carefully chosen word, and every unexplained smile would suddenly seem loaded with hidden meaning. The more Brooke analyzed the confrontation, the more convinced she might become that Katie had been trying to tell her something without directly revealing it. Unfortunately, knowing that a secret exists is not the same as understanding what it means. As these tensions continue building, the emotional divide between the Logan sisters could become even wider. Despite their history and deep family bond, they now appear to be standing on opposite sides of a growing conflict. Katie's loyalty remains firmly focused on her children and the opportunities ahead. Brooke's loyalty remains tied to the life she has built with Ridge and the family she has fought so hard to protect. Neither woman sees herself as the villain in this situation. Both believe they are defending the people they love. That reality makes the conflict even more heartbreaking because it is not fueled by hatred, but by competing versions of what family loyalty should look like. The coming days promise to reveal whether Katie's warnings were justified or whether Brooke's confidence in Forrester Creations remains well placed. What is clear, however, is that major changes are already in motion. Will Spencer's firing has created consequences far beyond a single workplace dispute. It has exposed old resentments, challenged family loyalties, and set powerful new stories into motion. As Hope's future becomes increasingly uncertain and Logan quietly prepares for its next move, the battle lines are beginning to take shape. And when the truth finally emerges, the fallout could transform relationships, careers, and family dynamics in ways no one is fully prepared for. The confrontation between Brooke and Katie may have ended, but the larger drama is only just beginning. As the dust from the confrontation slowly settled, an unmistakable feeling began spreading through the lives of everyone connected to both Forrester Creations and Logan. It was the feeling that a turning point had arrived. The argument between Brooke and Katie was not merely a disagreement between sisters. It was a warning sign that deeper changes were already underway beneath the surface. The fashion world they had known for years seemed to be shifting in subtle but undeniable ways. Long-standing loyalties were being tested, familiar alliances were beginning to crack, and people who once stood on the same side were now finding themselves separated by conflicting priorities. What made the situation even more dangerous was that many of those involved still had no idea how much was happening behind closed doors. Katie, meanwhile, would continue moving forward with growing determination. Every passing day would strengthen her belief that the future belonged to those willing to take risks and create opportunities for themselves rather than waiting for validation from others. Will's firing had initially felt like a painful setback, but Katie increasingly viewed it as an unexpected gift in disguise. Instead of remaining trapped in an environment where he was constantly compared to others and judged by the standards of another family, Will now had the chance to build something alongside Bill Spencer. The possibility of father and son working together represented more than a business arrangement. It symbolized a fresh start, one built on trust, family, and shared ambition. Katie could already envision Will discovering his confidence again, proving that one professional setback would never define his future. At the same time, the secret project involving Hope Logan Spencer would continue gaining momentum behind the scenes. While the outside world remained focused on Forrester Creations and its recent successes, something entirely different was quietly taking shape elsewhere. Hope's involvement carried enormous significance because she brought not only talent and vision, but also a recognizable name that resonated throughout the fashion industry. Her decision to step away from Forrester had shocked many people, but few understood the emotional exhaustion that had contributed to that choice. For Hope, this new opportunity represented more than a career move. It was a chance to rediscover her independence, reclaim her creative voice, and escape the constant turmoil that had surrounded her for far too long. The more Katie watched Hope embrace this new chapter, the more convinced she became that the decision had been the right one. There was a renewed spark in Hope that had been missing for quite some time. Instead of constantly defending herself or navigating endless conflicts, she was focusing her energy on building something meaningful. That transformation reinforced Katie's belief that stepping away from toxic environments can sometimes be the first step toward genuine growth. While challenges undoubtedly lay ahead, there was also a sense of freedom attached to the journey. For the first time in a long while, Hope's future seemed filled with possibility rather than uncertainty. Back at Forrester Creations, however, uncertainty was becoming impossible to avoid. Brooke would continue wrestling with the unanswered questions left behind by her confrontation with Katie. The more she thought about it, the harder it became to dismiss her sister's confidence. Katie had spoken with the certainty of someone holding a winning hand, and that realization would continue unsettling Brooke. Even during routine meetings and everyday conversations, fragments of the argument would return to her mind. The memory of Katie's warning finger, her carefully chosen words, and her unwavering conviction would refuse to fade. Something was coming, and Brooke could feel it, even if she could not yet identify exactly what it was. That growing unease might eventually lead Brooke to pay closer attention to Hope's recent behavior. Looking back, certain details could begin standing out in ways they never had before. Hope's decision to take a leave of absence, her emotional distance, the timing of various conversations and unexpected choices. Individually, none of those details seemed particularly alarming. Together, however, they started forming a pattern that Brooke could no longer ignore. As the pieces slowly shifted into place, she might begin suspecting that Hope's future plans extended far beyond a temporary break from Forrester Creations. The possibility would hit Brooke with surprising force. If Hope was truly involved in something significant outside the company, why had she kept it hidden? Why had she chosen not to confide in her own mother? Those questions would trigger a fresh wave of emotional conflict. Brooke's frustration would be matched only by her concern. She wanted to support Hope, but she also feared being left in the dark during one of the most important transitions of her daughter's life. The uncertainty would create a painful sense of distance between them, making Brooke feel as though events were unfolding around her without her knowledge or participation. At the center of it all stood the looming prospect of competition. Katie's prediction that Logan could become a legitimate rival to Forrester Creations would continue sounding less like an emotional outburst and more like a genuine possibility. The fashion industry thrives on innovation, reinvention, and bold new ideas. Even the most established companies cannot afford to underestimate ambitious newcomers. If Hope's talents were combined with Logan's growing momentum, the result could be far more powerful than anyone expected. Suddenly, the idea of Logan challenging Forrester no longer seemed impossible. Instead, it felt increasingly realistic. The emotional stakes would continue rising because this conflict was never purely about business. Beneath the corporate rivalry lay years of complicated family history. Every professional disagreement carried personal consequences. Every strategic decision risked affecting relationships that extended far beyond boardrooms and fashion runways. For Brooke and Katie, the struggle represented a clash between different visions of loyalty and family. For Hope and Will, it represented the opportunity to define themselves on their own terms. And for everyone else caught in the middle, it meant navigating a future filled with uncertainty. As these storylines move closer to their inevitable collision, the anticipation surrounding what happens next grows stronger than ever. Secrets cannot remain hidden forever. Sooner or later, the truth about Hope's future, Logan's ambitions, and the shifting balance of power within the fashion world will come into the light. When that moment finally arrives, it could reshape everything. Friendships may be tested, family bonds may be strained, long-standing assumptions may be shattered, and the confrontation that began with Katie demanding answers about Will Spencer's firing may ultimately be remembered as the spark that ignited an even larger battle. For now, however, the tension continues building one day at a time. The players are taking their positions, the plans are quietly advancing, and the future remains uncertain. Yet one thing has become increasingly clear: the rivalry between Logan and Forrester is entering a bold new chapter. As hidden agendas move closer to revelation and family loyalties face their greatest challenges, the drama is only becoming more intense. The storm Katie warned Brooke about is still gathering strength, and when it finally arrives, its impact may be felt by everyone connected to both families.